Cheng Yi has been a social animal for more than 4 years, going out early and returning late every day. He can do without dignity or anything else. But why still can't live this life well? With just enough to survive and facing the worst criticism from the boss, Cheng Yi fell into confusion. Until suddenly, monsters and their attribute panels appeared at home. Cheng Yi's life has changed. He not only has to commute to and from work every day, but also has to fight against monsters when he comes home. Cheng Yi. I can't live these days anymore. Just the originally dull life suddenly became vibrant again. Is this swelling? Keywords of the novel. I am upgrading to kill monsters in the real world without a pop-up window. I am downloading the complete TXT collection of monster killing upgrades in the real world. I am reading the latest chapter of monster killing upgrades in the real world. Chapter 1. What should I do if a monster appears at home and it swells? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. What should I do if a monster appears at home and it swells? Chapter 1. Linhai City, as a small coastal city, is indeed more economically developed than inland areas. But in fact, it's not that developed either. The colorful neon lights shimmered in the hazy mist. Some people's extravagant nightlife has just begun. And some people finally finish work, full of alcohol. It's so cold. Cheng Yi walked unsteadily on the deserted street, holding onto his clothes tightly to make himself warmer. He just finished socializing with the client and bowed to see them off. He is already 27 years old this year, and has been in society for more than 4 years. He lives like a defeated dog. Every day, the horse kept running around with customers, drinking and feeling nauseous during social gatherings, and the salary he received was only about 6,000 yuan. The rent, combined with regular expenses, doesn't leave much money. Girlfriend. Laughing to death, I dare not even look for it. Before, my parents always said to study hard, otherwise I would grow up like them and never earn money for a lifetime. I have to live by the eyes of others. He understood and worked hard to get into the undergraduate program. After the results came out, he realized that nothing had changed. He just continues the survival status of his parents. The most crucial thing is that he dare not resign at all. Once unemployed, it will be difficult for him to find a job again. As for his hometown, he is even more afraid to go back. Before, he was the hope of the whole village, the child with the best grades, and almost everyone believed that his future was limitless. Dad and Mom have been bending their backs all their lives, and finally they can stand up, but ended up going back so disheartened. At least you have to mix up like a person. For some reason, Cheng Yi felt that the night had become even colder, and the prosperity of the entire city seemed to have nothing to do with him. The most outrageous thing is that housing prices in this small city are still dragging up, and the central area has already leveled off. With his monthly salary, he can save up for 100 years to buy a small square meter without eating or drinking. His parents are both factory workers, and even if they empty their wallets, they can't make the down payment. Forget it. Tomorrow will be even better, won't it? Cheng Yi tried to smile, but couldn't smile at all. He supported the wall and walked up to the apartment building, returning to his small home where he only had one room but the rent was extremely expensive. 1,500 a month. I don't know how the landlord feels embarrassed to speak up. But out of this urban village, it's all above 3,000. Click, Cheng Yi inserted the key into the door hole, and with the sound of the pin being pulled out, a dark and damp room appeared. He supported the door frame and walked in, then threw himself onto the bed. I don't want to move at all. Suddenly, he noticed a faint blue light curtain appearing in front of him. Name: Cheng Yi. Age: 27. Available points: 0. Spirit. 1. Power. 0.83. Agile. 0.88. Constitution. 0.79. Note: the average level for adults is 1 point, what the hell is this? Don't disturb me, I'm going to bed now. Cheng Yi widened his tongue and waved his right hand in front of him, trying to drive away the light curtain. His actions took effect, the light curtain disappeared, and darkness returned to his eyes. That's great. I just want to have a good sleep. Cheng Yi didn't even take off his shoes. It's already a miracle that he can walk home, okay. Suddenly, a loud bang exploded in the darkness. Startled, Cheng Yi became more alert and his drowsiness disappeared for the most part. The thought of someone in the room made him shudder. Although he didn't know what the other party was doing in his poor man's room. But now, there are also more incidents targeting men. In order to protect the swallow, we have to guard against it. He quickly sat up from the bed, took out his phone from his pocket, shook his hands, and lit a flashlight before covering the room. The next second, he saw an unforgettable scene for life. At the end of the room, the space spun like ripples, with a singularity in the center emitting an ominous feeling. What the hell is that? Small black hole, has it come to my house? Cheng Yi's forehead stirred up fine sweat, and his back was soaked in a large area. The alcohol content dissipated in half in an instant. He felt a piercing sensation in his mind. That's the crisis instinct to remind him again. Call the police, hurry up. Cheng Yi ignored everything else and quickly took out his phone to call the police. He is just an ordinary car salesperson, studying cosmic black holes, let's leave it to scientists. Quickly, he dialed the alarm number. Hello, police station, may I ask what happened on your end? Black hole, suddenly a black hole appears in my house. Black hole. The operator was taken aback. Yes, I don't know how to describe it either. It doesn't generate suction, it just pulls and rotates rapidly in space. It's getting faster and faster, like a constantly stirring vortex. Operator. Damn it, there's a monster appearing in the vortex. Hurry up and call the police, remember to put on your gun. Cheng Yi looked at the black shadows emerging from the whirlpool of space, his eyes widened and his pupils dilated. May I ask where your home address is? But Cheng Yi no longer had the time to talk so much, because the black shadows appearing in the vortex plunged him into chaos. Is this person? The other person walked out of the vortex, wearing a tattered hoodie, somewhat like a medieval Western believer. Cluck cluck. After this believer appeared, he immediately opened his mouth full of sharp teeth and raised his arms like a zombie, walking towards him. The speed is really slow, like an old lady walking. This guy's ability to live is truly incredible, because his body has already decayed. Through the broken flesh hole, one can see the bones of Bai-Sen-Sen. The light curtain that disappeared just now reappears. Monster. Coronation cult followers, spirit. 1.5, power. 0.5, agile. 0.1, constitution. 0.2, ability. Coronal chant, sun hymn, burning curse, equipment. None, so, is this guy still a wizard? Want to fight close to me? Cheng Yi was completely awake at this moment, and if the monster in front of him and the sudden appearance of the panel were real, then this should be his opportunity to rise. He didn't hang up the alarm phone, but instead reported his address. After all, even if not reported, the police can still locate him here. Also, if the police come in the future, it will give him a chance to take a back seat. If I can't fight myself, I won't be killed by this guy. Cluck, heresy. Go to hell. The believers rushed towards Cheng Yi and vigorously waved their arms. Cheng Yi quickly rolled on the bed and widened the distance. Wait a moment, I can treat the wound on your body. Cheng Yi tried to communicate with the believer. Cluck. Die. The believer seems to be mentally disabled, with red eyes trying to kill him. The movements are stiff and slow. Cheng Yi circled with him a few times, then came to the wooden chair and lifted it to hit the believer's back fiercely. Bang! The wooden chair surprisingly shattered directly. The believer stumbled and lay on the ground. Is this the power of adrenaline surge? Cheng Yi was panting heavily and couldn't help but look at his hands. He has no fear now. Instead, it is an infinite sense of pleasure. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. First Kill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 First Kill. Chapter 2 Yongding Street Police Station. The operator explained the situation just now. The on-duty police officers looked at each other, unsure of what to say for a moment. This alarm call is too nonsensical to be believed. Small black holes. This is too ridiculous. It must be that civilian science expert who went crazy. Aren't there many who claim to have seen aliens these days? If it were a small black hole, let alone Earth, the entire solar system would probably be gone, wouldn't it? The on-duty police officers were discussing one after another. I was very panicked when I heard the other person's voice. It didn't seem like they were pretending. I think something really happened. The operator interjected. Well, since someone called the police, we must go to the police, that's understandable. Captain Zhou Tao nodded. The operator is responsible for assigning police officers, and if someone quarrels or fights, they will send police officers. If someone sets fire or kills someone, then they need to send a criminal police officer. And the events that occurred in the happy apartment made it impossible for her to determine. That's why the on-duty police officer was notified. Remember to wear a matching gun. The operator finally reminded. At the same time, happiness apartment. Cheng Yi lifted a wooden chair and smashed the coronal devotee to the ground, shattering the wooden strip. The coronal devotee was like an old man on the brink of death, struggling slowly on the ground, yet he even wanted to try to stand up. Call out. Cheng Yi was panting heavily, his heart beating like a bell. His tiger's mouth was torn and blood kept dripping out, but under the action of adrenaline, he couldn't feel the pain at all. This guy is really tough to deal with. Let me see what can be used as a weapon. Cheng Yi took advantage of the inability of the coronal worshippers to get up and scan the room, searching for something that could be used as a weapon. Unfortunately, he doesn't usually cook and doesn't have a kitchen knife or anything like that. Cheng Yi thought of a long fruit knife, located under the coffee table, which was quite sharp. He made do with it first. Thinking of this, he quickly ran to the coffee table. Due to being too excited, he tripped his foot and fell heavily to the ground. Ignoring the pain, he quickly climbed over. Opening the drawer, the fruit knife lay quietly inside. Cheng Yi was overjoyed and quickly took out the fruit knife, holding it in his hand. The blood flowing from the tiger's mouth dyed the handle red. It's still too small, not great. If there's a next time, definitely a big knife. Cheng Yi held a fruit knife and quickly got up to search for the figure of the coronal follower. Cluck cluck. At some point, this guy had already stood up, his bloodshot eyes fixed on him. What a lowly creature. The radiance of the coronal sect is about to illuminate this ugly and dark world. Now, kneel down and worship, let the sun god purify your souls. The coronarians finally spoke up. But it's some strange words and strange language. Lin Feng. Big brother, do you want to pee and take care of yourself? Wait, this passage has extremely important information. The so-called coronal sect seems to be invading the world he is in. Cluck cluck. Kneel down. Before Cheng Yi could even think about it, the coronal devotee screamed and rushed towards him again. This time, no longer insist on killing him, but to make him kneel down. What a strange request. Cheng Yi took a deep breath and held a fruit knife in his right hand, recalling the feeling of killing a tyrant with a knife in the game before. Then he seized the opportunity and stomped out with one foot, swinging a small knife in an arc in his right hand. It was directly inserted into the neck of the coronarian. Whispering, honking, honking. The coronarian finally felt pain as he covered the wound on his neck with both hands, widened his eyes, and retreated one after another. Then he stepped on the wooden stick and slid to the ground. Bang! Ah, it hurts so much. After realizing it, Cheng Yi felt a sharp pain in his right hand, and only then did he realize that there was also an opening in his right hand. Flip the skin outwards. This is his most serious injury from childhood to adulthood. As long as you can kill this coronal believer, everything is worth it. But soon, his smile solidified. This guy is not dead yet, covering his neck and trying to get up again. Life is really hard, no wonder there is not a good piece of meat all over my body, and I can still run around everywhere. Cheng Yi complains in his heart, looking for weapons again, and finally sees the dusty pan. This should be exciting. Cheng Yi walked over in 3 steps and 2 steps, holding the frying pan in his hand, and then slapped the head of the coronal devotee in a flurry. Dang 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 dang. It's like making iron. Unfortunately, there is no frozen fish in the refrigerator, otherwise he would have to come up and down a few times. Finally, accompanied by a few heavy blows, the coronarian collapsed to the ground and then a warning sounded. Ding, you killed a coronation cultist, full attribute plus 0.1, free attribute point plus 0.1, hoo 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 hoo. Cheng Yi sat on the ground with his back against the bed, preventing him from slipping to the ground. He was panting heavily, his adrenaline fading, causing a double sensation of fatigue and pain. What a pain! Cheng Yi's lips trembled, and a smile slowly appeared on his face. Full attribute plus 0.1, equivalent to 1/10 of adults, and also has a 0.1 degree of freedom attribute. The rewards can be said to be very generous. He thought for a moment and decided to add 0.1 free attribute points to his strength. There is a famous saying that he really likes, fists are hard truth. Immediately after, a stream of heat gushed out from deep within the body, flowing everywhere, warm and comfortable. This kind of improvement is comprehensive, with clearer thinking, lighter body, and fuller strength. If we keep going like this, earning money is like taking things out of our pockets. Dad and Mom, please wait, my son will soon be successful. Cheng Yi's heart was filled with mixed emotions, and as for the coronal cult he had killed before him, he had no sense of guilt at all. The other person looks like a zombie, unable to connect their lives with him. Moreover, he came with malicious intent. The current issue is, what should be done with the bodies of coronarians after their death? The police are coming soon. If his secret is discovered, will his reliance on turning things around also be taken away? Cheng Yi immediately realized the seriousness of the matter and glanced at the time. It had already been 5 minutes. How should we handle this? Suddenly, there was a rustling sound. Cheng Yi was startled when he saw the dead body of a coronal believer and started emitting black smoke. In just 10 seconds, the body of the coronarian disappeared as if it had never appeared before. Did you disappear? Cheng Yi breathed a sigh of relief, now it's much easier to explain. He leaned against the edge of the bed, not wanting to move, and waited for the police to take him to the hospital. About 3 minutes later, Cheng Yi suddenly heard a roar from the next door. Police! Everyone raise their hands for me. Immediately after, the sound of knocking the door rang out. Cheng Yi. What? Police uncle, did you find the wrong door? The next door fell silent again. 1 minute later, the door of Cheng Yi's house was knocked on, dong dong dong. Cheng Yi got up and opened the door. The police officer stood at the door and asked seriously. Did you report it to the police? Ah, yes. Did you know that your neighbor died? What? P.S. The coding is not easy, please follow up and ask for recommended tickets. The author mushroom has exploded for the big shots. Woo 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 woo. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The girl burnt into black charcoal. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 3 The girl burnt into black charcoal. Chapter 3 What is the situation? Someone next door to my house died. How did they die? Cheng Yi's pupils trembled and he stepped back 2 steps like a heavy hammer. His thoughts were very confused for a moment. Why is it at this time? Is the appearance of coronarians and attribute panels in his family related to the death next door? Also, the most serious problem is that his family is fighting like this, and there is still blood gushing out from his right hand. Isn't he the number 1 murderer, Stone Hammer? Are you okay? Zhou Tao's eyes flashed with alertness as he took 2 steps forward and helped Cheng Yi. Sorry, my legs are a bit soft, Cheng Yi said as he lay in Zhou Tao's arms. Well, it's okay. Zhou Tao comforted him with his mouth, but his eyes looked around, observing the situation inside the room. I don't know what I'm looking at, but I'm scared at first glance. Broken wooden chairs, almost scrap iron pans, blood-filled fruit knives, and furniture that is crooked. This is clearly a scene of fighting. Zhou Tao was startled and threw Cheng Yi directly onto the ground, quickly retreating and widening the alert distance. Oh my! Cheng Yi's body almost fell apart. Let's have something to say, don't be surprised at first sight. What is the situation at your home? Who are you fighting with? Zhou Tao retreated to the door and asked alertly. Cheng Yi's heart skipped a beat. Should he tell the truth or fabricate a lie? And what he said, it's really troublesome to associate it with the killer next door. After a few seconds of contemplation, Cheng Yi quickly spoke up. I saw my dad. The scene suddenly fell silent. Ah! Zhou Tao was stunned. It's like this, I just finished socializing with a client and got drunk. When I got home and wanted to sleep, I heard a loud noise. Guess what? I saw space spinning like a black hole. Cheng Yi continued to speak half-truth and half-falsely, and could also use drunkenness to cover it up. This is the content of your alarm call, Zhou Tao nodded, gesturing for him to continue. I thought this vortex would engulf my house, so I quickly called the police. But to my surprise, my dad walked out of the vortex with a belt in his hand and started thrusting at me. Have you ever been beaten when you were a child? Zhou Tao said with a strange gaze. His law enforcement recorder is on and has a photography and recording function. The other party's words can be used as evidence. I often play games, but I don't do well in exams. I go to internet cafes with my classmates and even play with lesbian scholars, but I still get pulled by the belt. Cheng Yi sighed. So, your family's situation is all caused by you being drunk. Zhou Tao doesn't want to continue this topic with Cheng Yi anymore. Someone died next door, and he's looking for a witness. Or, suspect. You can say that, Cheng Yi nodded with a bitter smile. At this moment, the police officer next door who was investigating approached and whispered in Zhou Tao's ear. The person is not dead yet, we have called an ambulance. There is no valid evidence at the scene, everything was burned down. No one died. Zhou Tao suddenly lifted his head, his face full of disbelief. That's right. First, retrieve the monitoring records of Happiness Apartment, and then investigate this little brother and call his clients to inquire. Zhou Tao looked at Cheng Yi and said meaningfully. Obviously, I don't believe Cheng Yi's rhetoric. Later, you and I will go to the police station, and we will make a written statement again. Okay. Cheng Yi nodded with a bitter smile, raised his right hand, and then said. I'm seriously injured, can you take me to the hospital first? Zhou Tao looked at Cheng Yi's 3-centimeter deep opening, his pupils slightly contracting. Tell the emergency center that there is another injured person. Yes. After explaining to Cheng Yi, Zhou Tao left his home and walked towards the next place where the incident occurred. Call out. Finally left. Cheng Yi sat on the bed, feeling exhausted. He couldn't do it just now, but he has been relying on willpower to sustain himself. The current tranquility is only temporary. He knew that he was still on the police suspect list. Wait. If I recall carefully, the initial loud noise did not appear in my room. But it's next door. It was precisely after that loud noise that spatial ripples appeared in his home, and the coronal believers emerged from it. Now, he needs to figure out the cause of the loud noise. Thinking of this, Cheng Yi couldn't sit still immediately. He quickly stood up from the bed and walked towards the door, supporting the wall. His legs seemed to have done 100 frog jumps, soft and sore. As he walked out of the room, he saw the residents of the happiness apartment opening their doors and sticking their heads out to look outside. The warning line has been raised and no one is allowed to approach. Cheng Yi, like them, extended his head to take a look. Then, he only felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. Around the neighboring door, there were large burnt marks, like a dark flower blooming along the door. He heard the voices of the surrounding residents discussing. Ah, it's too tragic. The rooms are all burnt to a pitch black, and people must not be able to survive. If I remember correctly, the room was still occupied by a girl who was quite young and beautiful. That's it. Strange thing, what a strange thing. Even if there is a fire, it is impossible to burn down the room in an instant. Did you see it just now? The explosion sounded, and the girl's room seemed to have a sun installed, it was too bright. Cheng Yi silently listened to the residents' discussions and extracted useful information. That is to say, there was a sudden loud noise in the room of the girl next door, but there was no explosive vibration or impact. Intense light and heat burned everything in the room. Wait. Does this situation seem a bit like the style of the coronal sect? He still remembers the skills of the coronal worshippers, coronal chanting, sun hymns, and scorching curses just now. The coronal cult he encountered did not release any skills, but engaged in close combat with him. The girl next door didn't have that much luck and was directly roasted by the skills of the coronal cult. Just don't know, does the other party have a property panel? As Cheng Yi was lost in thought, the sound of police sirens came from downstairs, beeping. 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 The ambulance is here. The emergency personnel wearing white coats rushed up with a stretcher and then carried a black charcoal out of the room. I can vaguely recognize the human form. Wait, she's still breathing. It's too tragic. Cheng Yi felt a chill as he saw this. I'll handle it urgently for you. Your wound is too deep, you need to go to the hospital for stitches, said the emergency personnel as they approached Lin Feng and looked at his right hand. Please. Cheng Yi endured the fear in his heart. Suddenly, he felt a faint red light flash through the residual light. This red light is difficult for ordinary people to perceive. Fortunately, he just improved his mental strength. This is Cheng Yi didn't dare to look straight in the eye, so he used his spare light to pay attention. Camera. Will emergency personnel be equipped with hidden cameras? Someone is monitoring this area. P.S. Difficult coding, seeking collection, seeking recommended tickets, seeking follow-up reading. The author mushroom has exploded for the big shots. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Monster Trailer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Monster Trailer. Chapter 4 The red light, the size of a needle's eye, flickers continuously. Like someone's eyes. Cheng Yi dare not look straight in the eye. He has just started and has no strength to fight. If what happened to the girl next door happened to him, he probably had to explain it as well. Fortunately, the coronal cultists he encountered were too intellectually disabled, and the mages had to engage in close combat. He was feeling fortunate in his heart that the emergency personnel had already treated his wound and said, "Let's go to the hospital to sew you up. Your wound is too deep." Good Cheng Yi obediently nodded and, under the gaze of Captain Zhou Tao, walked onto the ambulance. After he got on the car, the girl who was burned to carbon was not here. She should have been sent to the hospital first. Diwoo. Diwoo, the ambulance is moving. He sat in the car and keenly noticed a camera in the corner, flashing red light. He is not sure if this is a normal camera or if it belongs to that mysterious organization. After arriving at the hospital, the emergency doctor sewed up the wound for him and instructed him not to get wet for 3 days and not to eat spicy food. At this moment, it is already 2 o'clock in the morning. Cheng Yi dared not return to his rented house, so he stayed in the hospital for the night. He lay on the hospital bed, receiving an intravenous drip in his right hand. There were 3 patients in the ward, as well as accompanying family members. With more people, a sense of security arises. Cheng Yi looked at the dark ceiling in a daze, experiencing too many things today. Firstly, there are suspected coronarians from another world invading, mysterious attribute panels, and the girl next door burned to carbon. What can be certain now is that the coronal sect is associated with a certain organization in reality. Even, it may have been summoned by real organizations. However, on the other hand, is the attribute panel unique to him or does everyone have it? Name: Cheng Yi. Age: 27, available points: 0.1, Spirit; 1.1, Power; 1.03, Agile; 0.98, Constitution; 0.89, Dot. The 4 basic attributes all have an upward arrow. This is his current hope for rise. As long as he develops steadily, his physical fitness can quickly reach the superhuman level. There was a flicker of red light in his afterglow. That is the camera in the hospital hallway, which is now turning strangely, with red light shining through the observation glass in the ward. These guys are quite straightforward. Cheng Yi quietly removed the needle from the drip to prevent someone from injecting medication into it after he fell asleep. But this can only be said to be better than nothing. It's like seeking peace of mind. Subsequently, he felt his eyelids getting heavier and drowsiness sweeping over him like a tide. After opening my eyes again, it was already the second day. The chirping of birds outside the window. Clear light seeps in from the outside. The roommate walked towards the hospital cafeteria with the help of their family members. Cheng Yi felt half of his strength recover, so he sat up from the bed and glanced at the dripping needle that was hanging on the ground. I don't know if anyone plotted against him last night. To be honest, if the other party wants to murder him, he will definitely not survive tonight. If the other party does not take action, it indicates that they feel that they are not in danger or that it is not worth taking action. He doesn't think he can deceive the other party. Ha! Cheng Yi habitually opened the attribute panel and found that there were 0.01 more available attribute points. What is the situation? Can it be said that exercising in real life can affect the attribute panel? Cheng Yi was instantly excited. This means that he can improve his attributes without killing monsters. There is another channel for rise. And he doesn't want to face those monsters. He still vividly remembers the experience of the girl next door. He added 0.01 to his strength, and a small stream of heat immediately surged out of his body, making him feel stronger. Wait, Cheng Yi suddenly noticed an extra column on the panel. Next wave monster. 16 hours and 32 minutes, what? How come there is still a monster trailer? Cheng Yi suddenly felt numb. If there were a group of coronarians, his fate would be like that of the girl next door. He glanced at the time. 8:28 adding up with the countdown, it happens to be 24 hours. That's early in the morning. So a new question arises, will monsters refresh with themselves? Or is it fixed in one's own rental house? In order to avoid the mysterious organization, he will definitely not stay in the rental house anymore. Forget it. Cheng Yi shook his head. He is fully prepared for the monster refresh at night, and at the same time, he can remind the police to guard the happy apartment. The police have a gun in their hands, which is much stronger than him. Cheng Yi settled the medical expenses, and the total cost of first aid and hospitalization was over 500 yuan. Although the price was acceptable, it still made Lin Feng feel sorry. 50,000 deposit, 0.500. He decided to go to the hospital cafeteria to make up for it. Considering the improvement of the property panel, Cheng Yi bought a bowl of egg vegetable soup, 3 boiled eggs, a chicken leg, and a bowl of fried rice. A total of 15 yuan. 50,000 deposit, then 0.15. Cheng Yi was about to feast when a dark figure suddenly appeared in front of him and sat down in the seat opposite him. He trembled in his heart and looked up to see Zhou Tao's face. "You seem very nervous," Zhou Tao asked with a smile. "Of course, if the neighbor next door is burned to carbon and placed on anyone, it won't calm down," Cheng Yi said unhappily. "Let's go back and take a note with us. Can you wait for me to finish my meal?" "Okay." Perhaps it was because he was too tired yesterday, or perhaps it was because of the bonus on the attribute panel. Cheng Yi quickly swept away breakfast. He was surprised by his appetite. Subsequently, he got into Zhou Tao's police car and returned to the Yongding Street police station. The transcript went smoothly. The police did not list him as a suspect, but only recorded him as a witness. Both the camera footage of Happiness Apartment and the investigation of social clients show that Cheng Yi has nothing to do with this case. As for the cases he reported, they all ended in drunkenness. Cheng Yi walked out of the Yongding Street police station, and the dazzling light made him unable to open his eyes. A feeling of being separated from the world floated in his heart. He took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly. There are still monsters to deal with tonight. At this moment, his phone rang, and Cheng Yi picked up the phone and looked at it. His heart suddenly sank. The boss of the company called. He is facing a question now: should he resign? Although a monthly salary of 6,000 is a bit less, at least it is an income. Once you resign, you will only be able to make a living. But he hasn't figured out the way to get the money yet. Cheng Yi pondered for a moment and answered the phone. "Xiao Cheng, what's wrong with you? The customer we talked about yesterday suddenly said they won't sign the order." A lazy voice came from the other end of the phone. It seems that Cheng Yi owes him. This vampire boss. Cheng Yi's heart sank and he immediately made a decision. "Boss, I want to resign." On the other end of the phone, there was a sudden silence. Immediately after, the boss's pretended friendly laughter came over. "Oh, Xiao Cheng, what problem have you encountered? Isn't it just a customer? I didn't blame you, I just wanted to ask about the situation. We can discuss everything we have." Cheng Yi was momentarily taken aback. Later, he thought of many customers who were in his hands. He smiled. P.S. Difficult coding, seeking collection, seeking follow-up reading, seeking recommended tickets. The author mushroom has exploded for the big shots. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Customized weapons. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Customized weapons. Chapter 5. Xiaocheng, I know you've been working hard lately. You've been dusty all day just to run for clients, and I've actually noticed it. The boss is on the phone, his voice slows down and he looks like I'm thinking for you. Cheng Yijing listened to him draw a big cake, but didn't speak. The clients in his hands are his trump cards. I worked as a bull and a horse for the company for several years, and raised the boss very well. Now that the situation has changed, he also needs to retrieve something that belongs to him. The boss laid the groundwork for a long time on the phone, and his caring and warm emotions were directly filled. It's a pity that he didn't come to write online articles. When emotions reach their peak, the boss's words change. Alright, Xiaocheng, you are also an old employee. I plan to promote you to the position of manager. Give it a good sprint in the next 2 months and unleash your strength. It's fair for me to mention you then. Otherwise, others won't be convinced. The boss's voice had a sense of reluctance, as if there were many people competing for the managerial position. Cheng Yi smiled silently upon hearing this. If he remembers correctly, when he first arrived at the company, there was an old employee who was about to be promoted to manager. The old employees were very excited, working hard every day to handle customers properly. As a result, the boss directly kicked the old employee away after connecting with the client, and took care of the situation. 2 years have passed, and the boss has used this trick on him again. As the boss, it's not possible without progress. Boss, how much does the manager charge per month? Cheng Yi pushed the boat with ease. 8,000 plus commission. Think about it, how many salespeople are there to help you attract customers, and the commission will be higher than the salary. Xiao Cheng, you're not young anymore. You should earn more to start a family, the boss said with a smile. Everything about you is my posture. Let's talk about this matter. I just want to rest today, Cheng Yi said. He still has to deal with monsters at night. It's impossible to work. What did you say? Take a leave. The boss's voice rose 3 points in vain. It's as if taking a leave took his old life. Why? Can't we? Cheng Yi crouched under the tree at the entrance of the police station, leisurely asking. Your client, no longer in contact. The client was scared before, you didn't calm him down. The boss's voice gradually became harsh. I have to do everything. What do you need, boss? Are you counting money in the office? Cheng Yi retorted directly. This is what he had always wanted to say, and now he has finally said it. Don't be too pleased. You. The boss was stunned. Is this still his compliant employee? Wait for him to grab all the clients and kick this guy off. Aren't those obedient and cheap college students attractive? Okay, you're off today, come to my office tomorrow. We should have a good conversation, the boss's voice was extremely gloomy. Okay, boss. Cheng Yi tilted his mouth upwards and hung up the phone directly. This vampire boss is so angry. Cheng Yi felt relieved, even the fear of monster invasion at night had diluted a lot. Now it's time to deal with the monsters. What should I do? Cheng Yi looked at the bustling streets and fell into contemplation. First of all, his right hand was injured and made a gash, and now it hurts whenever he moves. So the weapons obtained also need to be handy. However, with adrenaline coming up, who cares whether it hurts or not? Let's kill the enemy first. Cheng Yi thought of a heavy crossbow, but it's not easy to handle, and the official is also explicitly prohibiting it. Most long-range weapons with killing power are locked, so it's impossible for him to buy an air gun from a toy store. Now it can only be melee weapons. My main focus is on strength, so I naturally need to use heavy cold weapons. The feeling of chopping melons and vegetables is the most satisfying. According to the intensity of the coronarians, he couldn't withstand a few chops. Cheng Yi was tempted, he took out his phone, then found a number from Mr. Wang and dialed it. Doo-doo-doo-doo, after a few busy sounds, the phone answered. Xiao Cheng, didn't I just buy 5 heavy-duty trucks? Why did you call me again? Mr. Zhou, do we need to do a good job in after-sales service here? Even if you have already bought it, I still have to greet you every day. Cheng Yi smiled slickly. No way, this is a mandatory course for sales personnel. A dog in front of a person, a dog behind a person. Haha, I just love dealing with you, Xiao Zhou. Doing things is reliable. Mr. Zhou chuckled. Everyone likes to be licked. Cough, Zhou is always like this, isn't that a forging mill? I want to customize something, do you think it's okay? After a few pleasantries, Cheng Yi revealed her background. Customize something. Yes, Mr. Zhou. Okay, I have some special steel scraps left over from making the spindle. Can you come over and see if it works? If it works, I'll give you a cheaper price. Thank you very much, Mr. Zhou. Hi, Xiaoyi, come over after 10 o'clock. I happen to be in the factory. Alright, Mr. Zhou, please be busy first. After hanging up the phone, Cheng Yi felt very excited. This is special steel. After World War II, countries around the world developed special steel to enhance the hardness and strength of ships. Adding different alloying elements to ordinary steel can achieve different effects. The bearing steel mentioned by Mr. Zhou should be tungsten steel or manganese steel, which has a high hardness. It should be very satisfying to make it into a heavy weapon. Cheng Yi glanced at the time, it was almost 9 o'clock. Mr. Zhou's steel casting factory is still in the suburbs, which takes over an hour by car. Cheng Yi didn't dare to neglect, so he called a taxi and asked him to take it directly to the steel casting plant. As soon as the taxi driver heard that it was so far away, he directly requested payment for the round-trip fare, which was a total of 200 yuan. Cheng Yi negotiated at a high price and ultimately reached 150 yuan. Even here, the driver still earns a lot of money and his mouth cannot close with joy. 50,000 deposit, 0.150. Spending money like flowing water. I just started today and spent 1/10 of my monthly salary. At 10 o'clock, Cheng Yi arrived at the steel casting plant on time, and the workers inside were busy. Who are you looking for? The gatekeeper stopped him directly. Hello, I'm looking for Mr. Zhou, Cheng Yi said with a smile on his face. I have no choice but to greet everyone with a smile and be polite when doing sales. It's you. The gatekeeper's expression changed slightly, indicating that Mr. Zhou had instructed him. Please come in quickly. Mr. Zhou's office is on the second floor, the first one on the right. The gatekeeper respectfully opened the door. Thank you, sir. Cheng Yi didn't put on any airs and just thanked him if he needed to. He walked past the busy workers and arrived at Mr. Zhou's office on the second floor. Yo, you're here. Xiao Cheng, sit down quickly. Zhou is always a middle-aged man with a big belly, and there is a fierce force between his eyebrows. Those who run factories these days are quite ruthless. What do you want to customize? We have design drawings here for you to take a look at first, said Mr. Zhou as he picked up a cup of tea for Cheng Yi. In terms of price, it's easy for us to say. Customization starts at 10,000 yuan. Cough. Cheng Yi almost spat out. He may not be able to withstand this 50,000 yuan deposit. I want to customize two things, a 1-meter diameter round shield with a handle at the back for grabbing. The second one is a heavy-duty large knife, the heavier the better, and it's best to make it sharper. Mr. Zhou. Young people, the world is still beautiful, don't take it too hard. PS, difficult coding, seeking collection, seeking follow-up reading, seeking evaluation tickets. The author mushroom has exploded for the big shots. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Cheng King around the pillar. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 6. Cheng King around the pillar. Chapter 6. Zhou always feels a bit scared. They are the construction site owner and contractor, and they put on a show. But like some honest people, they are really ruthless when it comes to being ruthless, not to the point of being ruthless. If Cheng Yi is causing something big, and in the end, it is found that the cutting tools are produced by his family, then all of his factories will be ruined. Cheng Yi saw Mr. Zhou's astonishment and smiled, saying, Mr. Zhou, don't worry, I usually leave it at home and never take it out. I have to get married and have children in the future, how could I do such a foolish thing? Mr. Zhou stared at Cheng Yi for a few seconds, then nodded and said, Okay, but we need to sign an exemption treaty between us. If something happens on your end, it has nothing to do with me. Okay, no problem. Cheng Yi breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it can be done. But he never expected that it would take 3.7 days to forge a high manganese steel knife. Cheng Yi was dumbfounded when he heard this. He thought he could ship it on the same day. Time has arrived at noon. Cheng Yi and Mr. Zhou discussed the design details, and then he learned that it would take 3.7 days to forge a high manganese steel knife. Do you still want this knife? Mr. Zhou asked calmly. Yes. Cheng Yi nodded. If he could survive tonight, then these weapons would definitely be useful. If you can't survive, give it to someone who is destined. Well, please prepay 50% of the funds first, and the remaining balance will be paid to me after receiving the goods. Mr. Zhou's expression softened. I can remind you that I am not a professional knife casting factory here, and there must be some flaws in the production. Okay, I understand. Cheng Yi took a deep breath and laughed bitterly in his heart. Despite putting in so much effort, he still didn't have any weapons tonight. How to calculate the price? I'll give you the lowest customization price for Xiao Cheng's sake, which is 10,000 yuan. 2 pieces will be 20,000 yuan. Okay, take me to the factory first to see if it's made of high manganese steel. No problem. Mr. Zhou readily agreed that with Cheng Yi's 20,000 yuan, he could earn at least 30%. Cheng Yi stepped into the steel casting factory building, and strong hot air rushed towards him. The sound of banging could be heard from deep inside the building. The high-pressure stove continuously releases white gas, giving people a feeling that it could explode at any time. The busy workers inside were all sweating profusely, as if they had been pulled out of the water. Mr. Zhou introduced the facilities of the factory and the production process of cast steel to Cheng Yi. Cheng Yi appeared to be listening attentively, but his gaze swept around, searching for a suitable weapon to use. For example, steel bars and the like can be used together. To his disappointment, this factory was cleaner than his face and had no steel products at all. This is your high manganese steel. Mr. Zhou brought Cheng Yi to the warehouse and pointed to a pile of steel. Cheng Yi squatted down to check, but couldn't see anything. He saw a pile of nuts next to him, each as big as a ball, so it should be easy to hit. Mr. Zhou, what metal is this screw made of? Cheng Yi immediately stood up and walked towards the pile of nuts. He tried to lift one, which was quite heavy, about 5 pounds up. Ordinary steel, please don't hit me with nuts. This is a limited quantity of nuts used for the spindle. Mr. Zhou, you can give me one and I will customize it for 20,000 yuan without any pricing. Cheng Yi played with the nut, getting more and more comfortable with it. Ah! This! Mr. Zhou was stunned, completely unable to guess what Cheng Yi was going to do. You must have spare parts for this batch of goods, so it's not a big deal to send me one. Wait a minute, I need to call and ask, Mr. Zhou said, taking out his phone and making a call. After the communication, he nodded and said, okay, I can only give you one. One is enough. Cheng Yi stood up with the nut and handed it over to General Manager Zhou. Mr. Zhou, we will process a handle here, with the front 3 corners sharpened to a sharper finish. What exactly do you want to do? Mr. Zhou couldn't help but ask. Don't worry, it definitely won't affect you. If you really want to listen, I can tell you. I hope you don't regret it. Cheng Yi spoke softly. Forget it, forget it. Although Mr. Zhou had a fierce expression on his face, he was so timid that he was about to die. I'm afraid I'll have to sit at the children's table in the future. 50,000 deposit, advance payment of 10,000. After the final payment is made, there will be a deposit of 30,000 left. Spending money is like flowing water. Cheng Yi sat in the office, feeling emotional in his heart. He opened the property panel and found that there were 0.01 more available attributes. Oh. Is this for breakfast digestion? Eating and exercising may be the most efficient combination for obtaining attribute points. He added this 0.01 to his strength. Heat flows out again from deep within the body. Warm and radiant. Let his strength increase further. Cheng Yi moved his right hand, feeling almost no pain. He opened the white gauze, and the stitching marks were still there, but it was already full of flesh red. Has a tribute addition improved my recovery ability? Cheng Yi was somewhat surprised. The bonus of the attribute panel is amazing. Not long after, Mr. Zhou walked over with a processed nut, with an extra handle at the back and a sharp angle in the front. Are you still satisfied? Well, that's great. Cheng Yi grabbed the handle and waved it in the air twice, making it easy to exert force. Before making the sword shield, use this nut to make it work. On Mr. Zhou's side, he was very considerate and prepared a bag for him to put on his back. He is always afraid that Cheng Yi will be reported if he walks halfway. Cheng Yi left the steel casting plant at 2 o'clock noon, his stomach already hungry. He found a dumpling restaurant, with its main customers being nearby workers who spoke loudly inside. Generally speaking, this type of dumpling restaurant is more affordable, with thin skin and more filling. 1 kilogram of dumplings costs 20 yuan, filled with pork and chives. Cheng Yi directly asked for 5 pounds and began to feast on them. The landlady was stunned and quickly brought a glass of water, afraid that he would choke. 100 yuan, eat until full. Cheng Yi supported his stomach and walked out of the dumpling restaurant satisfied. He needs to find a place to live before the night arrives, otherwise the monsters won't have a place to refresh. He doesn't plan to go back to the city. The rent there is expensive and the room is small, so it's better to rent a house in the suburbs. The environment in the suburbs is very poor. A large truck roared past on the road, rolling up a large amount of dust. He walked over and could feel the gravel hitting his face. There's no way, there are too many factories here, and there may be heavy trucks passing by that he sells. He found a house on his phone, with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room, located in the family area of the factory. The rent is 800 yuan per month. Very cheap. If you rent a room, it may be cheaper, but it's not easy for Cheng Yi to use it. 30,000 deposit, 0.800. Factory family area. Young man, there is a kitchen here where you can cook whatever you want, the landlady warmly introduced. Okay, auntie. After seeing off the landlord and aunt, Cheng Yi began decorating the living room for the evening. There must be something in the middle. When the time comes, let's have the Qin King wrap around the pillar. P.S. Difficult coding, seeking collection, seeking follow-up reading, seeking recommended tickets. The author mushroom has exploded for the big shots. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Without discussing martial arts ethics, come up with a big move. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Without discussing martial arts ethics, come up with a big move. Chapter 7. The family area of the old factory has basically run out of young people, while the remaining elderly people leisurely walk in the community. This kind of slow-paced life, living comfortably. Cheng Yi sat on the sofa, feeling the tranquility of the old community. He rented this house, and the original landlord saved enough money to buy a big house before moving out. All the old furniture was left here. The old TV, old coffee table, and wooden cabinets with flattened corners look full of vitality. Cheng Yi took a break and then started moving furniture, placing everything from the living room on the balcony. Clean up the living room, just put the old coffee table in the middle and use it as a pillar for King Qin to wrap around. After finishing all of this, it was almost dark. I'm so tired. Cheng Yi sat panting on the chair. The living room had already been emptied by him, and 30 square meters still looked quite large. He took a sip of cold boiled water, relieved his thirst symptoms, and then took out the new weapon nut. Monsters will invade in the early morning. And his advantage lies in being able to familiarize himself with the environment in advance and arrange the battlefield in a way that benefits him. The nut weighed 5 pounds, and he swung it in the air a few times, feeling like he could only make a heavy hit or block. The effect is similar to that of tiles. I've never had a fight before when I went to school. Now I have to fight against monsters, Cheng Yi sighed in her heart. Of course, there is also a possibility that the monster will come to the happy apartment, where everything is safe and sound. If that's the case, that would be great. He can use the attribute panel to quietly develop a wave. With this in mind, he opened the property panel. The pork and chives dumplings I had for lunch, combined with the amount of exercise I had just carried, resulted in an increase of 0.05 in free attribute points. 5 times more than breakfast. Considering the monster's attack tonight, Cheng Yi has added all his strength. The familiar hot flu surged from deep within the body, this time it was a big wave, seemingly with the function of relieving fatigue. The originally sour muscles are gradually recovering now, even his injured right hand has partially recovered. The stitched thread has also dissolved. If the doctor saw it, he would probably shout out at the monster, and this kind of injury would take at least a month to reach his level. In that case, I have more confidence tonight. Hope the monster doesn't go too far. Cheng Yi heard the girl next door, and the level of attack would kill anyone. Wait on the attribute panel of the coronation cultist, there is clearly a skill column, so can I also obtain skills? This aspect needs to be explored. But now it's evening, it's too late. Cheng Yi held the nut in his hand and felt that the weight of 5 pounds was a bit light, unable to exert his maximum impact. Now we can only make do with it. He imagined a monster appearing by the living room window and then moved around the coffee table, constantly practicing. How do I feel like my limbs are not coordinated? Cheng Yi practiced for nearly half an hour, then panted heavily while holding onto his knees. When he was running just now, he clearly felt that he had a situation where his left leg tripped over his right leg, especially when space was limited, which was more likely to occur. Is it okay to trip yourself up? I need to learn body movements in the future. The places where one knows how to teach oneself are boxing gyms, or more traditional places like Shaolin Temple. He will have to find it himself. Cheng Yi glanced at the time and realized that it was already past 7 o'clock. It was time to go out for dinner. By the way, save some effort and keep it until night to fight monsters. It is not advisable to eat too much at night. He casually found a restaurant and ordered beef-covered rice for 20 yuan. After eating and drinking enough, he strolled around the community and inspected the surrounding environment. The passing grandparents are very novel to him as a young man. The old factory area has begun to decline, and young people are running out, never seeing anyone moving in. Cheng Yi smiled at them and followed the crowd to the community square, where there were many public fitness equipment. There are many people here, the aunties are dancing in the square, the masters are stepping on the pedals, and a group of people are gathered in the northwest corner. Cheng Yi walked over to take a look and saw that he was playing chess. The battle was very intense, and both of the masters blushed with anxiety. The spectators next to them were also cheering. The scene was very lively. After looking for a while, Cheng Yi's heart suddenly moved. If he were to come into contact with chess, would he develop the skill of chess? Thinking of this, his heart immediately heated up. We must give it a try. Later, he saw the end of the chessboard and quickly squeezed through the crowd, saying, "Grandpa, why don't you play with me next time? I just moved in today." "Yo, where did this young man come from?" The old man who was tidying up the chess game was surprised. "Okay, come on, but let's first agree on a plate of 10 yuan. The old man said, quickly setting up the chessboard. "Oldly, you have the strength to participate in a big competition," exclaimed the nearby masters, "don't scare the young people away." Go, talk nonsense," said the old man named Li, feeling a bit embarrassed. Cheng Yi sat directly across from him. 10 yuan is 10 yuan. As a result, the opponent killed him in 10 steps and couldn't find the north. I admit defeat. I am truly at the level of a competition, and I am convinced that I lost. Cheng Yi stood up and said. Your strength is also too poor, no different from beginners. You go, I won't accept your money. Lao Li waved his hand. Grandpa, I must give you the money. I will come back to you for a sparring later. Cheng Yi insisted on paying 10 yuan before turning around and leaving. What a strange young man. Old Li looked at his back and shook his head repeatedly. On Cheng Yi's side, it was ecstatic. Because his idea was validated, the panel did indeed have an additional display box called Beginner Chess. 32/100 inch. The most crucial thing is that his spiritual attributes have been improved, directly increasing by 0.01. And his 32 proficiency in chess should be his original strength. He will have fixed activities to enhance his mental strength in the future. After returning home, it was already 9 o'clock, and Cheng Yi adjusted his state to the best, ready to wait for the monster to arrive. Time is rapidly passing by. Cheng Yi became increasingly nervous and his breathing became faster, finally arriving at midnight. The originally peaceful space in the living room suddenly twisted and began to rotate like ripples. Cheng Yi was mentally prepared, but seeing this scene still made his heart skip a beat. He held the new weapon nut in his hand and slowly stood up from the chair, waiting for the monster to appear. Cluck cluck. A familiar cry emanated from the vortex. Immediately after, a black shadow slowly appeared. The stiff movements and unique posture were identical to those of the coronal believers. Ha! Cheng Yi breathed a sigh of relief. But soon, the second and third emerged from the vortex, with bloodshot eyes looking at him. At the first moment, their mouths began to wriggle, emitting syllables that Cheng Yi couldn't understand. The tone is long and the speech speed is extremely fast. Cheng Yi felt as if his consciousness was being pulled, and the scorching aura around him grew stronger. Damn it! Without much thought, Cheng Yi stepped forward and lifted the nut in his hand, smashing it towards the head of the first coronarian. Bang! The coronarian fell in response, and the sharp corners of the nut smashed a big hole in his head. Huh, these guys don't talk about martial arts. If you come up, you can use more powerful moves. Cheng Yi looked at the remaining 2 coronal believers and murmured. P.S. We have received the signed website short message, experts can invest now. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Scorching and Twisted Sun. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Scorching and Twisted Sun. Chapter 8. The monsters that invaded this time are all coronal followers, and from the differences in attributes on the panel, they are different individuals. These 3 coronal believers are much smarter and understand that they are wizards. They release the spell as soon as they come up. Their singing sounds, with some kind of eerie rhythm, can confuse people's minds. Cheng Yi felt something wriggling in his heart, as if it was about to grow and replace him. That thing is the Scorching and Twisted Sun. Stop it for me. Cheng Yi couldn't help but shout angrily, cheering himself up and dispelling the influence of this eerie singing. He had already knocked down a coronal believer, with a sunken head, but the other person was still struggling to get up on the ground, clearly not dead. Cheng Yi stepped over him directly and charged towards the remaining 2 coronal followers. His originally planned plan for the King of Qin to walk around the pillar was ruined, and when he came up, he would sing and not fight at all. At this moment, one of the coronal believers suddenly changed his singing style and let out a few explosive sounds. Puh! Puh! The scorching breath condensed in front of him, and then it turned into a fist-sized fireball, charging straight towards Cheng Yi. The bright light even covers the electric light. It must be very eye-catching from outside the window, and Cheng Yi inexplicably came up with this idea. He had no choice but to lift the metal nut in his hand and slap the flying fireball fiercely. Dang! With a crisp sound, flames splattered everywhere. Cheng Yi's right hand trembled numbly, and the previously sewn wound seemed to show signs of cracking again. The metal nut is very hot. Cheng Yi broke out in a cold sweat, and the difficulty of killing 3 coronal believers who can cast spells skyrocketed. The previous coronal believer was just like a kindergarten baby. Cheng Yi suppressed the stormy waves in his heart and strode forward, smashing the head of the coronal devotee. The other party's movements were very slow, they didn't even know how to dodge, and they were directly hit straight. Bang! The coronarian once again fell down. The mental interference brought by the singing voice suddenly eased in half. After Cheng Yi knocked down the coronal follower, he grabbed a metal nut and swept it across, hitting the mouth of another coronal follower. The heavy blow directly caused his mouth to sink. But the metal nut couldn't bear it and broke open, leaving only the grip in Cheng Yi's hand. The singing stopped and the temperature inside the room had reached the level of a sauna. After 2 consecutive heavy blows, the adrenaline in Cheng Yi's body quickly dissipated, and he couldn't even stand steadily by shaking left and right. Lactic acid is rapidly accumulating in the body. He felt like he had lost his strength. I hope people outside don't notice, Cheng Yi-san thought. He dragged his exhausted body and began to repair the coronal believers, whose vitality was so strong that it was terrifying. Even if their heads are flattened and their mouths are shattered, it doesn't matter to them. We still have to get up and continue fighting. The pain doesn't seem to exist in them. Cheng Yi returned to the first coronal follower, holding a broken metal handle, which was a stick. Inserted into his trachea. Pushi, the metal rod was easily inserted. Whispering, honking, honking. The coronarian covered his neck and had difficulty breathing. Cheng Yi kicked him and pulled out the metal handle, leaving him with little strength. This pull resulted in a direct fall backwards. It's really exhausting. I really need to practice my physical fitness in the future. Cheng Yi sat on the ground, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Life and death struggle is not something that ordinary people can resist. Often, within a few moves, there will be a loss of strength. But now the situation does not allow Cheng Yi to rest. His eyes can already see the 2 coronal believers slowly standing up. It's really a life-threatening talisman. Cheng Yi crawled over with his hands and feet on the ground, lifting a metal handle and poking it at the eye sockets of the coronarian. He doesn't care about anything else, he just wants to kill the opponent as quickly as possible. Wheezing, the metal handle pierced into the right eye of the coronarian, causing the other person's body to tense up suddenly. Then, he raised his paw and scratched towards Cheng Yi. There is no pain at all. Is this all immortal? Cheng Yi felt a chill in his heart. He used a frying pan to kill the coronal cultists before, and he didn't know how to do it. He just slapped his head randomly. It doesn't seem like the most effective method right now. Since the brain is not working well, let's try the heart. Zila, Cheng Yi's clothes were torn and 3 bloodstains appeared on his body. He ignored these and stabbed directly at the left chest of the coronarian. He also doesn't know if his heart is here, and he doesn't have the chance to understand it usually. Now he can only rely on guessing. Fortunately, he exerted all his strength to insert the metal handle into the left chest of the coronarian, and the opponent's movements immediately stopped. Ding, you killed a coronation cultist, increased all attributes by 0.1, and obtained 0.1 free attribute points. The point of death for coronarians is in the heart. Even if their brains are gone, they can still move. Cheng Yi finally understood. He knelt on the ground, panting heavily and holding the metal handle inserted in his hands. My hands are even more bloody. Shwa, the coronarian in front of him turned into black smoke and dissipated, with metal handles hovering in the air as if they had been inserted into the air. Finally, take care of one. To be honest, it's unbelievable that he has come this far. Soon, Cheng Yi felt a surge of heat flowing out of his body. They were divided into 2 streams, one of which rushed straight to the brain, clearing the mental panic and making him feel very refreshed. The other stream transforms into heat and fills the limbs, dissolving lactic acid and providing vitality and energy to the cells. Cheng Yi suddenly felt much better. The strength has increased, and the spirit has become more acute. This is 1/10 the power of an adult. Cheng Yi slowly stood up and looked at the remaining 2 coronal believers, one with a broken mouth and unable to sing. And the other head sank down, as if his intelligence had been directly knocked out. He no longer used his mage's advantage, but instead engaged in close combat with Cheng Yi. Human beings do not resist, accept the gift of the sun god. The coronarian with a sunken head shouted. Accepting gifts. Gifts are meant to be killed by you. Cheng Yi and them successfully carried out the Qin King's tour around the pillar, across the coffee table. The gift of the sun god is eternal life. Becoming a divine servant and sharing endless life with the sun deities. The coronarian had a difficult mind and instead spoke too much. Eternal life. Cheng Yi took a deep breath. To his knowledge, emperors in history and capitalists today have never given up pursuing immortality. This is definitely considered a taboo temptation for them. But he has a property panel, and for him, immortality is not a great temptation. Moreover, the eerie level of the coronal sect is unlikely to make you immortal. I can go to your eternal life. Cheng Yi seized the opportunity and slammed his right foot onto the floor tiles, sending the metal handle into the chest of the coronarian. Pushi, deadly attack, immediate effect. The coronarian retreated backwards, looking blankly at the metal handle inserted, and then his body turned into black smoke. Human beings, prepare to accept the wrath of the coronal sect. Before he disappeared, he didn't forget to leave a harsh sentence. Clanging, the metal handle fell to the ground. The sharp parts that were broken have all been shattered. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Indeed, is the boss the true love? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Indeed, is the boss the true love? Chapter 9. The ripples of space still rotate in the living room. The eerie aura of another world is constantly emanating from it, as if gazing at everything. There is still the last coronal follower left. His mouth was pounded into thin pieces, making it impossible to sing, greatly reducing the difficulty of killing. Cheng Yi supported the wall and slowly stood up, facing off against the coronal believers across the coffee table. The sound of the previous kill prompt rang in his mind. Ding! Congratulations on killing a coronation cultist, increasing all attributes by 0.1 and obtaining 0.1 free attributes. The wonderful heat flows out again, flowing along the blood vessels, making people feel so comfortable that they feel like they are floating on air. This is the feeling of becoming stronger. Cheng Yi added 0.2 free attribute points to his strength, which is a 1.5 increase in strength for adults. The average level of an ordinary person is 1, and he has now greatly surpassed it. Name: Cheng Yi. Age: 27. Available points: 0, Spirit. 1.31, Strength. 1.45, Agile. 1.18, Constitution. 1.09, Ability. Chess Beginner, 32 out of 100. Monster Prediction. Encountering, all attributes have exceeded 1 point. Congratulations, you have exceeded 99% of the people. But this is far from enough. Cheng Yi slowly squatted down and pulled out a kitchen knife from the bottom of the coffee table. It was left by the landlord and he kept it as a backup. Now it can finally be used. Whispering, honking, honking. The coronarian still had some intelligence. When he saw Cheng Yi squatting down, he felt the opportunity had come and pounced on him. Wow! The knees of the coronarian smashed the glass coffee table. And he extended his hands and fiercely grabbed Cheng Yi's neck. At this moment, Cheng Yi felt a bit flustered. He sat on the ground, holding the handle of the knife with both hands and stabbing upwards. The cutting knife's penetration is too weak. It just pierced into the lower abdomen of the coronal devotee and did not penetrate at all. Cheng Yi lay on the ground, forcefully flipping over the waving coronalist to the side, and then immediately bullied him forward. Raise the kitchen knife above your head with both hands. Aim at the left chest and thrust fiercely. Due to excessive force, the stainless steel blade of the kitchen knife bent directly. Then it snapped with a click. Cheng Yi was taken aback by the fact that the material was too soft, and he didn't know if it could harm the heart of the coronal devotee. He himself almost lost control and fell onto the coronal believers because his kitchen knife broke. After stabilizing his figure, he quickly looked at the coronarian, who had a broken kitchen knife inserted into his left chest. It seems to have hit the heart. Soon, the coronal devotee was covered in black smoke and quickly disappeared into the living room. Ding! Congratulations on killing a coronation cultist, increasing all attributes by 0.1 and obtaining 0.1 free attribute points. The energetic heat flow surges out again, recharging tired cells. Cheng Yi felt a clear mind in his mind. The ripples in the living room are dissipating and eventually disappearing without a trace. The coffee table has broken, glass debris has scattered all over the ground, and the metal support frame is faintly visible. Cheng Yi looked at the scattered living room and burst into bitter smiles, almost explaining it here. When the three coronarians were singing just now, he felt a bit hopeless. The most crucial thing is that the eerie singing voice can actually affect people's minds. If it weren't for his high spiritual attributes, he might have hit the road. The night returned to silence. Cheng Yi came to the window and glanced outside, confirming that no one was paying attention before walking back. He fought against the coronal cult for half an hour, now at 12.33. Monsters probably won't come back, will they? Cheng Yi is afraid that if the monster comes out again after he falls asleep, he will die unjustly. A blue fluorescent attribute panel appeared in front of him, with his gaze drawn directly to the bottom. Monster trailer. For days, 23 hours, 27 minutes, the monster takes about 5 days to arrive. Cheng Yi's heart was instantly shaken. Finally, I can relax and develop a wave. If the monster attacks the next day, and it is a higher level monster, then he may not be able to handle it. His weapons were not forged properly. Cheng Yi felt relieved now and dragged his tired body towards the bedroom. He didn't have time to prepare the bedding and still use the original landlord's, but it's okay, he just wants to sleep and rest now. His current physical condition is even more tiring than moving bricks on the construction site for a whole day. Both physical and mental exhaustion. He threw himself on the bed, didn't have time to take off his clothes, and pulled up the blanket, then closed his eyes and fell asleep. Perhaps the body needs a digestive attribute point bonus. He dreamed that he had grown taller during this sleep. The next day, he was disturbed by the ringing of his phone. Cheng Yi opened his eyes drowsily and then glanced out the window. It was already dawn. Ah, my whole body feels like it's falling apart. Who is this? I called early in the morning. Cheng Yi muttered as he got up. Suddenly he took a deep breath and felt a severe soreness in his waist. He quickly lifted the blanket and looked at his waist, only to see that his clothes were already rotten and 5 bloodstains were clearly visible. This was scratched by coronarians last night. These 5 wounds are not scabbing, but are constantly purulent and have an unhealthy black color. These coronal believers are poisonous. Can't I just wash my nails? Cheng Yi was immediately aroused. He knew that this matter was significant and quickly got up from the bed. The phone is still on the bedside table, stubbornly ringing. After putting on his shoes, Cheng Yi put on a coat to cover the wound and prevent it from getting cold. He picked up his phone and found that the caller ID was actually the boss. Sure enough, is the boss the true love? Cheng Yi picked up the phone and ran outside the door, his legs still feeling a bit sore, but it wasn't a problem. Hey, what's up? Cheng Yi ran wildly up the stairs. Why haven't you answered the phone for a long time? The boss's roar immediately came from the speaker. When he heard Cheng Yi panting heavily, his attitude immediately changed. Xiao Cheng, are you rushing to the company? Don't be so anxious, let's talk about the position of manager later. The boss's face changes like flipping through a book. I'm racing against the god of death again. I can't slow down. Cheng Yi roast in his heart. Boss, I have something else to do, I'll hang up for now. After speaking, Cheng Yi pressed the hang-up button and searched for nearby hospitals. This is a suburb, there are no major hospitals, and tertiary hospitals are all located in the city center. He originally intended to call 120 directly, but he did find a hospital called Factory Affiliated Hospital. It's nearby, about a 10-minute walk away, and in his current situation, he definitely can't walk. Accelerate blood circulation and die faster. He called a taxi at the entrance of the community and headed straight to the affiliated hospital of the factory area. Perhaps there is a physical attribute bonus, and the wound on the waist has not further worsened, and the pain has not worsened. The family hospital in the factory area is quite crowded. Cheng Yi didn't have time to register and headed straight to the emergency room, explaining the situation to the nurse. The nurse took a deep breath when she saw the wound on his waist and understood the seriousness of the situation. The doctor prescribed him various antibiotics, while the nurses surrounded him to clean the wound and abscess. The condition was quickly brought under control. Cheng Yi looked at his waist wrapped in white bandages, and his heart suddenly moved. Perhaps he can learn some medical skills. If any accidents occur in the future, treat yourself. P.S. Difficult coding, seeking collection, seeking recommended tickets, seeking follow-up reading, seeking monthly tickets give the author some motivation. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Old Boxing Arena. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Old Boxing Gymnasium Chapter 10 Young man, what happened to your wound? Fortunately, there was no tetanus, otherwise you would be in trouble. The middle-aged doctor disinfected Cheng Yi while speaking. Cough, I had a fight with my girlfriend and she accidentally scratched me. Cheng Yi touched the back of his head and explained what he had prepared. This kind of wound is not something that cats or dogs can scratch, only humans with flexible fingers can do it. The middle-aged doctor looked at him in surprise and then said softly. Young people, pay attention to your health. Cheng Yi nodded repeatedly, his waist wound had already been bandaged and it wouldn't take long to recover. Afterwards, the middle-aged doctor prescribed him some antibiotics to prevent the recurrence of the waist wound. Cheng Yi went to the pharmacy to buy medicine and added a medical kit, which contained bandages, disinfectants, alcohol, and so on. First aid expenses plus medical expenses plus medication expenses. A deposit of 12,000 or 30,000 yuan is almost unbearable. Cheng Yi has not yet learned his medical skills, so he definitely won't leave. He bought 3 cups of coffee on the roadside and headed straight to the nursing room. The 3 nurses who had just bandaged him were joking in the duty room when they saw Cheng Yi showing surprise behind him. Nurses, you've all worked hard. This is the coffee I just bought, helping you stay alert. Cheng Yi walked in with enthusiasm on his face, having been a car salesperson for so many years, his face had already become thick. There is no such thing as being afraid to speak to strangers. Are you the patient who was scratched by your girlfriend just now? How dare you come like this? I'm not afraid my girlfriend will be jealous and scratch your face too. The nurses also recognized him and started laughing and talking. So I came here to learn from scriptures. If you teach me how to do first aid for a wound, I'll use this coffee as tuition. Cheng Yi smiled and placed the coffee on the table. Also, I bought a first aid kit, just teach me this. Oh, what kind of coffee are you buying? Just ask us and we'll definitely tell you. And now everything is available online, just search for it and it will come out. You don't need to buy coffee. Both sides declined each other, and then the nurses accepted the coffee. In fact, Cheng Yi has also considered learning online, but he feels that it is not as fast as being taught by real people, and the attribute panel may not necessarily recognize it. He needs to be actively involved in a certain activity in order to acquire the corresponding abilities. Subsequently, the nurses taught him first aid hand-in-hand, wound dressing, and wound hemostasis. How to disinfect, medication usage, and so on. After thanking Cheng Yi, he walked out of the nurse's duty room. He walked to the waiting area and sat down, immediately checking the properties panel. Name: Cheng Yi. Age: 27. Available points: 1. Spirit. 1.41. Power. 1.55. Agile. 1.28. Constitution. 1.19. Ability. Beginner in chess, 32/100, beginner in emergency medicine, 1/100, monster prediction. For days, 16 hours, 23 minutes, indeed, there is an additional item for emergency medical care. In the future, if he is injured, he can take care of it himself to avoid further deterioration of the wound. Wait, what did the nurse sister teach just now? Cheng Yi suddenly felt confused. He recalled the first aid technique he had just used and found that he could still remember it in general, but the details were already blurred. He has forgotten the names of many drugs. This is the downside of short-term memory. Without sustained stimulation, knowledge cannot be transformed into long-term memory. Cheng Yi looked at the panel and noticed that the emergency medical care item began to flicker, as if it would disappear at any moment. This can't be forgotten. Cheng Yi felt a bit anxious. Going back and learning again is obviously unrealistic. He saw that he still had 0.1 free attributes left, and his heart suddenly moved, wondering if he could add the ability of emergency medical care. So he quickly allocated 0.01 and added it to the ability of emergency medical care. The originally dimly lit ability box suddenly returned to normal, while the number behind it changed to 11 out of 100. Cheng Yi felt that the information in his mind was fixed, and there were also some other uses, such as judging a person's bleeding site or the degree of internal injury. He also gained some understanding of the structure of the human body, including the lungs, kidneys, heart, and so on. It's unbelievable that you can improve your abilities. Cheng Yi sat in the waiting area, feeling excited. Subsequently, he attempted to add 0.01 to the chess piece, and the number behind it immediately jumped to 82/100. Cheng Yi immediately felt a memory in his mind, which was a scene of him constantly playing chess. Ability gradually improves. Although he has not yet broken through as a beginner, he is confident that in the hands of chess master, he can definitely make it past 20 steps. However, the proficiency in chess increases by 50 points directly. What's going on? Emergency medical treatment only adds 10 points, while chess directly adds 50 points. Is it determined by the difficulty level of the ability? Cheng Yi is lost in thought, unable to determine yet, and can only try again in the future. He took out his phone to take a look at the time and found that there were actually more than 10 missed calls from the boss, which can be seen from these 2 digits that the boss was crazy. When I mentioned the Mercedes-Benz Big G, why didn't you give me a call? Cheng Yi sneered repeatedly, putting his phone in his pocket. The boss will discuss it later. Subsequently, he contacted the clients he had contacted one by one, stabilizing them and preventing the company from taking them away. After making a few phone calls, Cheng Yi's face darkened. As expected, the company obtained the customer's phone number and took the lead in contacting them. Fortunately, his clients only recognize him and not the company. Otherwise, the boss would definitely kick him away. I only have 26,000 yuan left in my pocket, and even if I save money, I can only use it for a month. I need to get the money from the company. Cheng Yi silently pondered in his heart. He walked out of the factory-affiliated hospital, and the bright sunlight shone through the leaves, directly onto his face. Cheng Yi squinted at the sunlight and felt half of the gloom dissipate in his heart. He has a property panel now, that's it. He originally wanted to take a taxi back, but he had nothing to do at home. He couldn't spend this precious time playing chess with the master. Although it can enhance mental strength, he now needs to increase his strength even more. With this in mind, he came to the shade of a tree and opened the map to search for a nearby martial arts or boxing gym. Even if it's not good, a gym will do. Traditional martial arts have gradually declined and have been replaced by modern fighting techniques, such as boxing. It is not certain how much real skills can be learned from the operation of commercial capital mixed in this. There is no martial arts gym here, but there is a boxing gym nearby. Just the score above is a bit unattractive, surprisingly only 1 point. Of course, there is only one evaluation. What about the agreed muscle plasticity? After practicing for so long, my abdominal muscles haven't come out at all. RNM, refund. Cheng Yi. However, he still plans to go and take a look, as it is also close. Cheng Yi walked 2 streets and finally saw a sign hanging on the street, a boxing gym, and an upward arrow next to it. The second-floor wall is made of old glass, which has good transparency. Cheng Yi walked in, empty inside, with only a girl wearing tight sportswear exercising. Sweating profusely, with shiny skin. Generous and wealthy. The exposed abdomen has a strong muscular sensation. End of this chapter.